Hey, this is Matt once again. What about to end the video? There's another paid request, this time for John, the Zero Cool. Thank you so much, my friend. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos, it could be a topic, randomness, out of the blueness, review, re-review, reaction, commentary, whatever it may be, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box under pretty much each of these videos. Now, he said top 10, but I decided to do 12 because I thought this was actually a pretty neat topic. So 12, he said 10, but 12 actors slash directors collaborations that should have happened. Meaning, what's an actor and what's a director that you wish the two of them would have worked together. And there's a ton of choices, so I limited down to 12. Number one, I thought of my favorite actor, action star, my favorite director, Sylvester Stallone and John Carpenter. Now, of course, would it ever happen? Stallone would want more control, John Carpenter wants control. I mean, no, but this is just pie in the sky if they learn to settle down type of thing. It would be interesting to see a Stallone performance and a John Carpenter look, feel, and sound of a movie. I really liked I See You. But I imagine if that was directed by John Carpenter, with the camera work and the music, although the music in I See You is really good, what that could have really brought to it. Or if Stallone wasn't as... he had such a tight grip on his career, if he's able to loosen it up a bit with certain circumstances, like that movie Shadow Company, if they turned to Kurt Russell as the Vietnam vet, fucking Sylvester Stallone as a Vietnam vet dealing with zombies, soldiers, that'd be awesome. Like Arnold did with Predator. I mean, they're competing so much. Hey, Arnold worked with Predator. Do your horror action. Doesn't have to be like Predator, but... or even if John Carpenter back in the day, instead of doing... what movie? I could watch Ghost of Mars, but okay, let's say instead of Ghost of Mars, if he did Hunter with Sylvester Stallone. That'd be interesting. Now, of course, as if they want to do it, but I just think of like Stallone, his how he can do as an actor and his intensity, and then what John Carpenter could bring to it, like when he worked with Kurt Russell. I think that would be really cool. It would have been cool to see Stallone in a John Carpenter type of movie. Because again, you've seen how Carpenter could work with Kurt Russell and like The Thing. I think that would have been great to see come to fruition. And how I could say like John Carpenter with a lot of people, but I try to mix it up so it didn't all look the same. Number two, I put Jean-Claude Van Damme with James Cameron. And I was going to put Jean-Claude Van Damme with John Carpenter, which would be cool to see, but I just had Carpenter, so I didn't want to change it up. But Jean-Claude Van Damme with James Cameron, I mean, if Jean-Claude Van Damme, off the drugs, kept his ego in check. I looked at the way he worked with Peter Hyams on Time Cop, and Time Cop is great. I looked at the way that Eva Roland Emmerich in Universal Soldier, and that's an awesome movie. John Woo in Hard Target, which is my personal favorite Van Damme movie. If you did James Cameron, a guy that he did a big budget behind him, and do either action or a sci-fi action movie, and you have Jean-Claude Van Damme, that would have been really cool to see. That would have been really cool to see that collaboration. Okay, he could utilize action like he did with Arnold, but he was a guy that could do a bit more physically in fight scenes. You know, cleaned up and sober, and hey, you gotta behave, Van Damme, you gotta behave on this. And again, if everything, the cosmos came together, Jean-Claude Van Damme working with a guy like, and this is like the good James Cameron, not the shitty Jimmy Tammy, who approved of, oh yeah, Terminator Darth Vader's great. Blah, 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 blah. I'm talking about the the James Cameron of The Abyss, True Lies, Aliens. That's what I'm talking about. That James Cameron. That would have been very cool to see. Number 3, I put James Woods and John Woo. I know it sounds random, but don't worry, John Woo appears a couple times on this list because him and John Carpenter are my favorite directors. But I picked James Woods because he's such a great actor. And he's such an intense actor. I've never seen him give a bad performance. I looked at the way he did films like John Carpenter's Vampires. And I think, man, what if that guy is a very intense hero? If you did it right, he could be the American Chow Yun-Fat. I know it sounds bold words, but you look at a guy that's got the presence and the acting, and you look at the characters, you know, and hard-boiled and like that type of character. I think of James Woods in Cop. Imagine that movie Cop, as good as it is, and then imagine a type of version of that with you get the great acting of James Woods' intensity, and when the action kicks in, you got the John Woo spectacle. I think James Woods would be game for it because he was good in The Hard Way. He liked working with Michael J. Fox. He liked vampires. He liked doing something different. He rarely got to play the lead hero. Like, if The Specialist was directed by John Woo, and you switch the roles, so if James Woods was the good guy and Stallone was the bad guy, you take out the Sharon Stone stuff, and you have more... He's a bomb expert, but you also have some gunplay. Man, that'd be a really cool version of The Specialist. Like, he does bombs to kill people, and those bombs could be filmed the John Woo style, slow-mo, and then when he's got to get up close and personal, he can defend himself there too. That'd be really cool. And Stallone is there to seek him out, and you know, that would have been really cool. But James Woods and John Woo, you get an intense, great actor, and then you get John Woo that can handle the action. I would love to have seen that. Number 4, this may seem random, but you know, I wanted to create some interesting ones. Eddie Murphy and John Hughes. You may be going, what? You know how Eddie Murphy would later go into these family films, or you know, softer films as you call it. If John Woo Hughes had not retired, I think of John Hughes the way he did Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. The way he worked with John Candy, and what he got out of John Candy and Steve Martin. Out of both of them. If he's able to bring that out of Eddie Murphy, even if it's a PG-13, because hell, my favorite comedy is The Golden Child, and that's PG-13, and Eddie Murphy was still pretty damn funny in that. If you're able to bring Eddie Murphy a bit of the loose with the comedy, but then, like, John Hughes, I know he's a stickler for the script. That could be really interesting melding of two worlds. Like, even if Stallone didn't do that Bartholomew versus Death, if it was Eddie Murphy and John Candy as feuding neighbors, that'd be pretty fun. I don't know, I think that they're two different comedic talents, and maybe it'd be too much oil and water. But I would be very curious to see what they could do together. And if you bring the heart that John Hughes brought to Uncle Buck and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and maybe a little bit more of the edginess that even Eddie showed in The Golden Child. And go roll his ass till it bleeds. I think that could be a really interesting collaboration. Number 5, I picked Bruce Campbell and Wes Craven. Now, I was going to put Bruce Campbell and John Carpenter, but he was in a John Carpenter film. It was Escape from L.A. I guess I was thinking, like, as a star. Like, starring role, Bruce Campbell and John Carpenter would have been cool. But I went with Wes Craven, because that would be cool, too. Because Bruce Campbell I mean, he worked with Sam Raimi quite a bit, and Wes Craven, to me, wonderful talent, greatly missed. And I looked at the way he did films like Shocker, Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And that actually would have been cool in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I mean, people don't... I love Wes Craven's New Nightmare, but that'd be cool if you had, like, an actor who is kind of in the middle of this. And it's Heather Langenkamp's movie, but then Bruce Campbell's a co-star. And, you know, he's... just... You don't have to go Ash. You could just... Bruce Campbell just being Bruce Campbell. A regular guy with a sense of humor, and the two of them working together to try to save this kid. Plus, it'd be cool to see Bruce Campbell work with Robert Englund, because those actors never worked together. By the way, it doesn't have to be that. It could be a number of other movies. I'm trying to think of what Wes Craven films that were never made that could have been. I'm trying to remember, because there was Scream, Music of the Heart. He did those two. My Soul to Tate sucked. Cursed sucked. About some other original new idea with Wes Craven directing, Bruce Campbell being the star. This would have been an interesting collaboration. I would have been curious to see what that came out of. Because the way Wes Craven writes, maybe give a bit more of a serious role for Bruce. He could still have a sense of humor, but a bit more meat to play with as a character. Like even like Peter Bird and Shocker, I think, did a good job and had a bit more to play with. Like, what if Bruce Campbell had that opportunity? I think Wes Craven could have given that to Bruce. He's just not, you know, he's not just the goofy guy. He could, you know, I think that's a guy that could have been a good leading actor and wasn't really given the chance other than a lot of these lower budgeted B movies. Number 6, I put Jean-Claude Van Damme and Renny Harlin, because Renny Harlin is a talented director. He did a good job with Jackie Chan on Skip Trace. He did a great job with Stallone and Cliffhanger. And even Andrew Dice Clay, Adventures of Fort Fairlane. Bruce Willis and Die Hard 2. Even, you know, Thomas Jane, Sam Jackson, Deep Blue Sea. I liked Elm Street 4, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. I liked Prison, that movie with Viggo Mortensen in it from the 80s. I think that could have worked well with, you know, he worked with Bruce Willis, he worked with Arnold Schwarzenegger. No, he didn't. That'd be another one I was thinking of, Schwarzenegger. But he worked with Bruce Willis, Stallone, Jackie Chan, Andrew Dice Clay. Never did work with Arnold. Like, again, if I did more, that would be another one I put on the list. Because I did think about it. That's why I popped in my head and it came out of my mouth. But yeah, he worked with Stallone, Bruce Willis, Jackie Chan. I think Renny Harlin could have been interesting with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Because Renny Harlin does have a style. He does bring a certain energy to not all, but a lot of his action films. You tell, especially back in the day, he was a hard worker. And rather if it was a sequel to Time Cop, Renny Harlin would be a good choice. Because he could do sequels with Elm Street 4 and Die Hard 2. He can do spectacle like in Cliffhanger and the like. You know, again, Die Hard 2. Or hell, as much as I like Thomas Jane, Jean-Claude Van Damme would have been cool in Deep Blue Sea. Hell, even put a moment where he kicks a shark in the face. I'll live with it. They wouldn't put that in, but still. You'd think about it. But yeah, Van Damme and Renny Harlin. You know what? 12 Rounds. That shitty movie. If you had Renny Harlin with the budget he had, and you had Jean-Claude Van Damme saying, "This is your time to shine." Like, you look at Van Damme, as much as people don't like this movie, his fitness in Universal Soldier: The Return was great. He cared. You could tell by his performance, his emotions. He smiled. He was with the humor bits of the film, the action bits. He would do some really good fights. I think his fight with Michael Jai White is one of the best fights in his movies, aside from the CGI at the end. But the rest of it is pretty damn good fight. I definitely think this is his most underrated fight in a movie, is with him and Michael Jai White in Universal Soldier: The Return. If you had that fitness of Van Damme, and 12 Rounds with Renny Harlin directing, he'd be a fuckload better than John Cena. And that maybe could have been a comeback for Van Damme. Probably not. It would have bombed because at that time a lot of those type of films bombed. But I would have much preferred Van Damme in 12 Rounds than fucking John Cena. And I think Renny Harlin could have helped that a lot. So, Van Damme and Renny Harlin, I think that's something I would like to see. 7, of course, I was going to put another John Woo one, and so was Sylvester Stallone, of course. Sylvester Stallone. And there were, at one point, Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger were going to do Face Off. That never came to be. There was a point where, oh yeah, John Woo, you know. I think John Woo said he'd be open to doing an Expendables movie. Why that never came about, I don't know. Maybe Stallone wanted too much control. That's one of... I like the guy, obviously, but that's one of his biggest mistakes is putting too much control on some of his projects. Same with like Stallone and James Cameron, if James Cameron directed it, because technically they kind of co-wrote Rambo 2, but then one wrote it, and then Stallone rewrote it, and then James Cameron said, I wrote all the action, and Stallone wrote all the politics. I think since then, that's when James Cameron and Stallone, like, didn't like each other. But I think maybe Stallone, but yeah, Stallone and John Woo, that would have been cool. Would have been cool to see, even if like I mentioned that thing with John Woo and James Woods, the specialist. They don't have Stallone in there, and that's the face-off I would see. Not the actual face-off, but James Woods is a good guy. He'd be an underdog compared to Stallone, because Stallone's bigger, and you even have a fight scene. Oh, there's no way James Woods would win, and you know Stallone is more intimidating. But you know Stallone's never going to lose, and I know. That's why I said it's all pie in the sky. If the cosmos got into perfect alignment, Stallone and John Woo would have been great to see them work together. Because John Woo worked well with Van Damme. Not so much Dolph Lundgren and was a Blackjack, but that was just a shitty movie all around. And he was a pilot for a TV show, and it just wasn't good. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I have to put him somewhere on the list, so I put him number 8, and with Sam Raimi. People go, what? Why? When you look at Arnold's career, this guy worked well with a director who knew a bit what he was doing. Arnold was smart enough for that, and I think while he did have control, one of the reasons, as much as I love Stallone, one of the reasons I think Arnold did better at box office profits in the 80s to 90s is he was able to relinquish more control, and I think he was a bit more of a bit smarter to the business aspect. I think Stallone was trying to get that acting respect, and I think he is a good actor. So, you know, a lot of people don't. Arnold knew he was a commodity. He knew he was a product to be used, and he wanted to find the right directors to sell his product, which was himself, his charisma, of his the one-liners. Think of Sean Connery, James Bond. He knew that, and he worked with a lot of good directors. John Milius and Conan the Barbarian, the same John Milius that would go on to direct Red Dawn, the good original Red Dawn. John McTiernan in Predator, and then John McTiernan would go on to direct Die Hard. And of course, they also did Last Action Hero, which I'm a fan of. Paul Verhoeven, Total Recall. Of course, James Cameron, The Terminator, Terminator 2. Even Walter Hill, Red Heat, even though they didn't do too well, Red Heat is still a fun movie. What was it? Chuck Russell in Eraser. Chuck Russell who did the Blob remake from 1988. Number 3 Part 3 Dream Warriors. The Mask. He's a good director. Eraser is a fun movie. Peter Hyams, End of Days. I know he's not a fan of End of Days, but I think that's one of my... I think that's a very underrated Arnold film. It's easily one of my favorite Arnold films. I saw End of Days in the theaters in '99. I still love it. Peter Hyams is a good director. So again, he picked a lot of good directors, and a guy he never worked with. I think in that same way, like it was interesting with him and Paul Verhoeven, him and Sam Raimi, that would have been an interesting collaboration. I'm talking about the early days of Sam Raimi. I'm talking about the days of Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, Dark Man type of Sam Raimi. I looked at that visual style that Sam had in those movies, with the way he moved the camera, and certain interesting shots he would bring up, like even Dark Man. You look at Dark Man, like when he gets the guy, I think it's Ted Raimi, in the manhole, and the way the camera's going past, and going towards people, POV shots. If you get Arnold Schwarzenegger, who at that time could command a big budget, and you get Sam Raimi do what he wants, I don't know what movie it would be that they work together on, but that could be pretty cool team up. And kind of like it was with Paul Verhoeven. Speaking of Paul Verhoeven, since Paul Verhoeven did work with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall, and of course I was like, well, yeah, him and Stallone, but I wanted to give another actor some shine. Paul Verhoeven and Bruce Willis. I think, Bruce Willis maybe be one of those where he looks at Paul Verhoeven, how excitable he is, and Bruce would behave. And he worked with John McTiernan. He worked with Richard Donner later on in 16 Blocks, and Paul Verhoeven, I think of that ultra-violent style, and I look at the way like Bruce Willis in some of his movies. Yeah, a little bit of violence, in Die Hard, the first 3 films, and even Last Man Standing, Walter Hill, 2 guns. I don't know which project of Bruce's I would pick. Maybe the Paul Verhoeven if he was directing. I'm trying to think as the years go on. Of course, no one liked working with each other on The Last Boy Scout, but there's still a damn good movie. I think Tony Scott did a wonderful job, and then Bruce as well did a great job in that. A Paul Verhoeven Die Hard movie would be interesting. I'll say that. That'd be an interesting... Paul Verhoeven Die Hard movie. I actually like to see that. I'd like to see how that would work out. But I don't know. I'm trying to think, because Paul Verhoeven sadly didn't do a whole lot of movies, because after Total Recall he did Crusade, never got made. He did Showgirls, Basic Instinct, Hollow Man, which I liked, Starship Troopers. I think after Hollow Man, he pretty much went out, left Hollywood, and adios muchachos. So maybe again some other script out there that was never done. Just be interested to see how those two worked. Because again, Bruce worked with a lot of directors as well. That's kind of for a while. His career was doing decent business too, because he worked with John McTiernan, of course, who had just done Predator, Renny Harlin, Die Hard 2, Terry Gilliam, 12 Monkeys, M. Night Shyamalan, Sixth Sense, and Unbreakable, and then M. Night Shyamalan went to the toilet. Richard Donner, 16 Blocks, which I like. Tony Scott, Last Boy Scout's awesome. Don't care what anybody in the production says. Might have been a bad movie to make, but it was a damn good movie to watch. Walter Hill, Last Man Standing. So yeah, Paul Verhoeven, that'd be an interesting look at what they would have done together. Number 10, I had to mention this guy, Brandon Lee with John Woo. If Brandon Lee was still with us, I think he would have done a film with John Woo. He was a fan of John Woo. He would talk about he was a fan of John Woo. You look at Rapid Fire. There were moments of Rapid Fire inspired by John Woo. You're shooting 2 guns. When John Woo was getting to the American circuit, I mean, I don't know how many American films John Woo would have done around that time. Did Hard Target, then Broken Arrow. As much as I like Christian Slater, imagine Broken Arrow with Brandon Lee versus John Travolta. That would have been pretty cool, and that was Fox. And Fox did Rapid Fire. And if The Crow was successful, hey, I get to work with John Woo, maybe he would take it. And I like Christian Slater. Don't get me wrong, I love Christian Slater and Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow I love. But imagine Broken Arrow starring Brandon Lee. Of course, John Travolta wouldn't have a chance. But, I mean, neither did the bad guys in Rapid Fire. But, you know, you have the Goons, and then, you know, there you go. The final fight would be a bit different. But I don't know, maybe have like Brandon Lee at least hurt and, you know, wounded, so he slows down a bit, so you can make it a bit more believable. But that would have been pretty fucking awesome. Yeah, or just a new movie. It doesn't have to be, just a new movie. Brandon Lee, John Woo, that would have been great to see. Would have been great to see together. And then I put two more. 11, Kurt Russell and John Woo. Because I think of like Kurt Russell, he was the original choice for Hard Target, but he had a bunch of projects backed up, so he could never do it. I'm glad with the film we got, because I love Hard Target to death, but even later on, it would have been cool to see Kurt Russell work with John Woo. That would have been very cool. As much as I like Paycheck, if Paycheck was R-rated and it starred Kurt Russell in the Ben Affleck role, it would have been better. And again, I like Paycheck. I think Paycheck's an underrated film. I like the story. I do like Ben Affleck. I don't hate him like other people do. I like that movie. But again, if you told someone, hey, if we make that R-rated and you have Kurt Russell in the lead, I think people are like, okay then. So that would have been really cool. And then 12, I just put Stallone and Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood's a director, and what he would be like to direct Sylvester Stallone in like a very serious, dark, gritty, I don't know. Like if Rambo Last Blood had a different, better plot, and no, I wouldn't even say that. Rambo 4 ended perfectly. Fuck that. If he had a different story, and it was like a dark, gritty, somber, not like Unforgiven, but like Unforgiven, like, not copying Unforgiven, but even that same feel of Unforgiven, but you have Stallone starring it and Clint Eastwood directing it. I think that would have been cool collaboration. It would have been cool to see what could have been done with that. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a Western. It could be any other story. But Stallone and Eastwood, I just thought that would be an interesting team up. Like, what would a Clint Eastwood directed film starring Sylvester Stallone be? Yeah, I would love to see that. But then, you know, that's 12 that I picked. I could probably go on for another, another 20, but I'll end it there. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.